How's it going, everybody? This is Aaron the Pedantic. Today we're going to be talking about XP and why it is the best way to go as far as your leveling system goes. I was watching a video with Brennan Lee Mulligan and Matthew Mercer, and they were talking about, they're debating XP versus Milestone. I'm going to put Milestone in quotes because technically what they're talking about is leveling without XP, but that's a whole other discussion. Either way, the whole thing was that they were debating the merits of XP and the merits of not using XP. And whenever I see the arguments, a lot of times the arguments that are for not using XP tend to, I think, miss just a ton. So one of the things that was mentioned by Brennan Lee Mulligan was that he thinks that it's kind of absurd that, your character accomplishes this really, really great task, but they still have to kill like X number of rust monsters or something like that in order to actually get to the point where they level up and then they get the new cool abilities or whatever. And this is a classic mistake that I think is really, really plaguing the 5th edition's Dungeons and Dragons community. And that is that people just don't understand that there is progression outside of the leveling system. And one of the progression types that we've had for ages, it has been one of the most reputable and enthralling, and that would be magic items. Just the sheer virtue that you accomplish this great task. You went out and you did this thing. You searched for something. You braved all these terrible things, and then you find at the end of the crypt, you find this cache of magic items. And there is the whole wonder of what is it? What does it do? Who should have it? What should we do with it? Is it safe to touch? Should we take it out and have it checked for curses and all these kinds of things? The progression of magic items is something that is directly tied to your accomplishments as a player. And there is a lot of power in that. And I think that people have gotten so tied up in what do I get at this level or that level that they've almost completely forgotten that magic items even exist. And DMs just are so much more focused on just trying to create the plot points and make things really exciting for the players, from moment to moment. But they're failing to understand that if you put things into the world that the players can strive for, that they will go to great lengths in order to have those things. And once they get them, there is a story attached to it. There are all the events that they went through, and that they can recount a story to their friends about what all transpired in their adventures, how they got this magic item right here, how they got this one. And they can be even tied to, story beats. I'm using all this in heavy quotes. People know how I feel about the word story when it comes to D&D. But the point remains the same. You have magic items. You also have such things as boons. You have the maybe once they've completed this great undertaking, then it's time for them to undergo this ritual that is only given to a few select people, maybe one person every 10 years or something like that, and it bestows this unique power. And it's something that does not have to be within the leveling structure. I think that people are so stuck on just the leveling structure that they lose sight of what kinds of wonderful things they can experience in the game that can be incredibly motivating. So another thing that was brought up was just the fact that, this was actually a point for XP, but it's also brought up as a point against XP by the same people a lot of times, and that is that it shows a very clear motivation for players to attend your sessions, right? Because what happens if they don't attend their sessions is that they start falling behind. And some people actually use that as an argument for saying that XP is really not a good thing, because then you will have players whose characters are maybe a level or two behind. They say this as if it's just this terrible, dreadful thing. It cannot be accounted for, cannot be made up for. It's just awful. It's the worst thing ever, being a level or two behind. Maybe at first level, if you're still first level and then everyone else is third level, that could be pretty rough, because you may get one shot into absolute nothingness. But most of the time, the worst thing that happens is no worse than anything that you get from just having dipped, a level of multi-classing into something else. As far as, maybe you don't get your extra attack yet. Maybe you don't get your next level of spells yet. Where other people are throwing fireballs and things like that. Maybe you're still having to use the Scorcher one, the flaming sphere. Maybe you are a little bit less equipped. You have a few less spells per day. Maybe your proficiency bonus is one less than everyone else. Maybe you didn't get your ASI yet. There are all these things, but they're so minimal in comparison to what people make them out to be. The biggest thing to me is probably going to be the hit points. The hit points are really the greatest factor there that are going to really throw people behind. And even that just means you need to play a little bit more carefully. People need to watch you a little bit more closely. Maybe you're not the person who's going to be taking the most risks. But the way that the XP structure works, more so in past editions, I'll admit, much more so in past editions, but it still works this way in 5th edition, is that you are continuously needing more and more experience points in order to progress from this level to the next. So, for instance, from first to second, it's 300. You need 300 to get to first to second. Then you need 900. So now you're needing actually twice as much from second to third as you are from first to second. And this is the structure that it had in the past that worked really well. Is that you always needed twice as much more, so that way, whenever somebody is behind, then it's a lot easier for them to catch up and maybe just be one level behind you. Because while it takes you twice as long to get to the next level, they're getting at least one level to catch up before you ever get there. It works much nicer that way. In 5th edition, they kind of forewent that structure so that you always need at least as much as you needed for the last level, but probably a little bit more. So like at some points, it's like you need 20,000. Now you need 20,000. Now you need 25,000. Now you need 25,000. Now you need 30,000. Now you need 30,000. It does that for quite a while. But at the same time, unless you have players that are just missing constantly, which, I mean, I've been that player before, so I get it, then it's really not going to be that great of an issue. And even if it is something that is going to happen a lot, it's just not that bad. It just is not that bad for someone to be behind a level or two in 5th edition D&D. It's just not going to be that bad. They may not feel like they're as potent as their friends. Is that a terrible thing? To the modern audience, yes, it is. Because of the fact that they put so much into combat performance, because that is the mode of play that almost everybody actually knows how to do, because it's the one thing that the rule book actually takes the time to give you the tools to run properly. But you have to remember, there was a time in D&D's history when people played adventures where you were playing characters that kind of sucked at combat. Thieves were not good at combat. They were subpar fighters at best, and they were very subpar fighters. Your magic user was useful a couple times per day, and then they were done. They were basically at that point a really, really crappy fighter. And you know what? Yes, there are people that said that they hated D&D for that reason, but 5th edition gives you so much more than that. You have so many more capabilities than that. You're not bound by, I'm a lower level magic user, I'm a lower level wizard, so once I use these few spell slots that I have, that I'm done for the day. No, you have your attack cantrips that you can keep on using. There's just so much there that lower level characters can do. There's just no reason for people to be that obtuse about it. There is still so much that can be done, even if you're a little bit lower level. You'll be fine. It'll be fine. There's a good chance that you're going to maybe not catch up right then, but you're going to get where you need to be. So I think that is one thing that's incredibly blown out of proportions. I've run a 5e game using XP. Yes, people kind of fell behind. but it was fine. It was fun. We had a great time. Um, those are really some of the biggest things that I often see. Um, there was another thing that was brought up in the video, and that was that if you use XP, then it can make it so that the leveling pace is out of your control, and that means it can go absolutely bonkers, so that you level up from 1 to 20 in like 3 weeks or something like that. Was the thing that was presented, but that's not an XP problem necessarily. I mean, the same thing can easily be said just by using leveling without XP. The problem there isn't the XP system. The problem there is lack of good timekeeping. And let's be perfectly clear. The kinds of things that you get whenever you level up do not make any kind of narrative sense unless you use some kind of training rules, unless you have some kind of period of time that's not just a long rest, where stuff is going to happen that is going to explain the fact that your character now has all of these abilities. This is especially true for subclasses. This is especially true, I would say, for wizards, because wizards who otherwise absolutely have to have spell scrolls and things like that in order to learn new spells, now they just get it from sleeping overnight. They get 2 of them. Where? These are brand new ones, and they're more powerful than any of the ones we've ever known before. Where did they come from? Exactly. It's especially true for subclasses and those kinds of any kind of feature that just radically changes what your character is capable of. Getting it overnight is absolutely absurd. Some of the only classes that really make much sense when it comes to that are the fighter and the thief. But even then, I say the thief, it's the rogue in 5th edition. But even then, if they delve into those weird subclasses, yesterday I was able to swing a sword well, and that was pretty much it. And now I'm able to cast magic spells. I'm an Eldritch Knight, so I have a shield spell. I have this binding ritual. I have all these kinds of things. Or the arcane trickster, where now I've got some spells. I've got a familiar. That was a good night's rest I had. It's not the XP that's the problem. It is not the XP that's the problem. You just have to know how to use training rules. That just make it so. Hey, y'all are wanting to take the time to level up. Let's use a passage of time. Let's find a time to do it. And then everything starts to kind of flow together. And you also need to be tracking time well as far as like traveling and things like that. Because if people don't do that well, then yeah, it's going to be absolutely bonkers the amount of time that passes. And not even just thinking about leveling, but just thinking about the kinds of adventures that they've had in such a short span of time. It has nothing to do with XP. It is a problem of people not using calendars properly. That's all I have to say to that. I guess I will say this. People that hate the bookkeeping, if you hate bookkeeping, I get it. I think that that's a valid reason to not want to use an XP system, but I would recommend that you look at Dungeon Crawl Classics and what they do for their XP system. Basically, the numbers are much smaller. Every encounter gets a rating from 0 to 4 in XP, 0 being trivial, meaning you use no resources, 4 meaning it was an incredibly difficult, you used all kinds of resources to survive. And so, it may take, it's like from level 0 to 1, yes, it does exist, it takes 10 XP. From level 1 to 2, it takes 25 total, so 15 more XP. And then the scale goes like that. So you're dealing with much smaller quantities. It's much easier to calculate, but it still has all the benefits of an XP system just about. The more risks you take, the faster you level. So the only other thing I can think of, it'd be a good reason for people not to use XP, is if the things that you give XP for normally are things that you don't want to motivate the players to do. And an example of that might be something like Lion and Dragon, where because you're playing medieval characters, it may not be in your best interest to motivate the players to just go and rob crypts all the time by giving them XP for gold, or to have them just go around wanting to kill things, because they're going to want to be participating in medieval society in some ways, and maybe in some political intrigue and things like that. And in that case, you reward them on a session-by-session basis. You participated in the session, you get an experience point. You participate in so many sessions, you get a level up. There are ways to do it. I think that leveling without XP is not a good thing. I think it works for people that do streaming shows and things like that, or people that just really don't want to have to worry about that kind of bookkeeping or that kind of disparity between what the players are capable of. But I don't think that it fosters a good gaming environment. I think that it's boring. That's my own personal take. You don't have to agree with it. Let me know what you think. Peace out.